Hi everybody, welcome back to Davi Books, and I've been out of commission for about 3 weeks because I got COVID when I came back from my trip, and I got everybody else sick in the house too, so I know they're very grateful to me right now. I'm coming out of it, and I just wanted to sort of do a catch-up video as quickly as I can so you can see what I read while I was sick, what I'm going to read, what new arrivals came. So let's hit it. What I read while I was sick. Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of Nim. I saw this movie in the 1980s and I loved it. I thought it was just the coolest thing. But now that I get the book and I finally read it, I begin to realize how far the movie strayed from the original story. And in the original story, Jenner is not the evil usurper that he is in the movie. And also, there is no magic amulet. So if any of you have seen the movie, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. This story I prefer to the movie because it had a more natural and down-to-earth plot, and I thought that it was a more, I don't know, I hate to say realistic, but it was a little more organic than the movie was, and I think I appreciated that fact about it. It still had its tense moments where you're kind of like going, oh my gosh, now what's going to happen? Which was great. But the ending was much more gentle than the movie itself. I read from the mixed up files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler, and I have to admit, I was about 2/3 of the way through, and I was still contemplating putting the book down because for me, it was hard to keep going. It was funny, there was humor in it, which I was appreciating. And the story is about two kids that run away from home, and it's the girl's idea to run away from home, and she drags her younger brother with her. And instead of going to some, like in the woods somewhere, they end up camping out at the Natural History Museum in New York. And that's unique, so that caught my eye. I thought, oh wow, how would they handle that? But the storyline itself, I had a hard time really being interested until about 2/3 of the way through, and then boom, it kicks in for me, and I enjoyed the rest of it. And I thought it was very witty. It's set to take, the setting is in the 1960s. It was a cool story. It was a funny story, and they have to solve some sort of mystery, and you see their adventures as they go through that, and they have loads of coins, and that's what they're purchasing their food with. And you see that little exchange between the sister who's more impulsive and the brother who's more meticulous, and those are the comical moments in the book. This was a good story. I enjoyed it, again, but it was a slow start for me. I'm currently reading The Phantom Toll Booth. This is a cool story. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I didn't read it sooner. It reminds me of sort of an Alice in Wonderland type of things, with the way it has a play on words and the fantasy world that this young boy goes into. I've only just started it. I don't have much to say other than that. It kind of rings to me of like an Alice in Wonderland sort of adventure. I also read Esperanza Rising, about a 14-year-old girl who lived in the post-revolutionary Mexico. She was a girl of means. Her father owned a hacienda. They had many servants. The hacienda system was prevalent in Latin America after the Spaniards colonized America. And it could be very cruel, or it could be a secure existence. There's more history to that. I'm not going to go into it. This is right up my alley because I've studied this, so I really latched onto this story. And basically what happens is tragedy hits the family in Esperanza, some members of her family, some of these servants. They all had to flee to the United States, to California, and they all became migrant farm workers. And you see how hard it was for her to adjust to this hard life. She's still at 14. One of the servants was still undressing her, bathing her, and dressing her, doing everything for her. And now that she's living basically in poverty, she has to learn to cook, to clean, to take care of babies, work in the fields those long hours and in the heat. It was a real growing up experience for her. And one important thing that she got to see was the beauty in poverty, because poverty does have its own share of beauty in some ways, and it changes her. for the better. It's a beautiful story. I loved it. I also read Olive's Ocean, a coming-of-age story about a girl shortly before she leaves for her annual family vacation, finds out something about one of her classmates that's very touching to her that kind of makes her think, well, why me? And her whole time on her vacation, she's trying to work this out, and she wants to do something special for this girl. And you really see her grow through this experience and how it changes her and her perspective on things. It's a sweet story. I love this book from the very beginning. It had me. It was a wonderful story. I read Coraline. Finally, I read Coraline. Again, this is one of the ones where I watched the movie, thought the movie was cool. Now I'm reading the book, and the movie was pretty faithful to the book. So if anybody's seen the movie, you'll enjoy the book. A little tweak here and there, but pretty much the movie was this. I also read The Witch of Blackbird Pond. I had a lot of time to read. The Witch of Blackbird Pond, I remember this being a required reading in some of our English classes at school. I don't remember reading it, ever. Maybe I read a snippet of it in the readers that they, had in class. So I only perhaps read a chapter from this book. That's so bad when, instead of, when a child's reading, they'll have these readers that has, a clip of this story, a clip of that story. It's so hard to really experience a full story, a full book as it's meant to be experienced. It's not the same. It's not the same. It's boring. So maybe what I remember reading was a chapter out of this book when I was in school, and it made no impression on me. This book in its entirety was written in the 1950s. So, of course, some of the language was very common to the 1950s. And it's set in colonial America. And the message of the book is not allow our own ignorance and our own prejudices to cause us to be cruel and unfair to other people. And I loved that message. And this is said really well. This young girl did not grow up in the colonies. She grew up in the Caribbean with her grandfather. So she was not used to this Puritan colonial life. It was just a total culture shock to her. And she meets a woman who lives alone, away from the colony. So, of course, people were suspicious and thought this woman was a witch and blah, blah, blah. And she befriends the woman, gets to know this strange woman, and sees that she's a wonderful and gentle soul. But, of course, the villagers, because of their own personal ignorances and their own personal prejudices, cause all kinds of problems, not just for the old woman, but for this girl who is her friend. Wow. Good story. Wonderful story. Read it. I also read Juan de Pareja, and this is a story set at the time of the famous painter Diego Velázquez, who was the painter for the Spanish royal family. Juan de Pareja was his servant. Now, these are two actual people in history. And you get to see into the life of the painter, Diego Velázquez, and what a good and honorable man he was, and his slave, Juan de Pareja, and the hardships he endured, and his love for art. But because he was a slave, he was not allowed to practice the arts or to learn them. So in this story, you see how his master, Diego Velázquez, handles this situation. Beautiful story. I love the history in it. A little bit of exposure to Diego Velázquez's commitment to his art and what he believed was important as an artist. Great story. Love it. And two other books I read them both on my Kindle. And they were both books by Madeline Miller. Circe and Song of Achilles. Now, she is a classics major, and she pulled the story of Achilles and wrote this beautiful story of Achilles and Patroclus growing up as young boys and their very close love that they had for each other. And, oh my gosh, she did such an astounding job. She did the same with Circe, the daughter of a sea nymph. But Circe grew to love mortals, which was looked down upon by the other gods. So she was sort of an outcast from the beginning. Even her siblings gave her a hard time. And you see how she grew to love the sun of Odysseus and gets to meet Odysseus's wife, Penelope. And there's a whole series of events that happen there. If you've studied the Iliad and the Odyssey, you'll be familiar with these characters and the general storyline. And you see how Madeline Miller has beautifully weaved in this wonderful story around this. And I am telling you, she had me from the very beginning. I could not put these books down. I had to read and read and read, and I was reading late into the night. I haven't done that in a long time. Those were excellent books, wonderful books. All right, so what did I buy? Before I left, I purchased another Shakespeare book. These are his sonnets because I want to read through them and become familiar with them. I've got a lot of his tragedies, but I don't have any of his sonnets, and then I'm going to work on the histories. And I'll show you those when I get them. When I was at the airport at LaGuardia, and I like to walk around a lot while I'm waiting for boarding time because I don't like to sit and wait and then get on the plane and sit and wait. I don't like to do that. I like to walk. So I was looking through all the shops, and they had a bookstore there. So, of course, I'm going. And wouldn't you know it, hidden behind a display in a middle aisle, and I had walked through this bookstore now like 2 or 3 times, I found this little nook. And in there, I found 4 books from the Penguin Classics Deluxe series that I had yet not purchased or found in my own local bookstores. So what do you think I did? I purchased all 4. So the first one was Moby Dick. That's the front. And that's the back. And then the French flaps. Isn't that cool? And on the front, if you've read the story, you know who this is. Isn't that neat? And then, with that, I also found Lady Chatterley's Lover, which is set as more of a comic strip type thing. There's the back. French flaps. And these two, which I really wanted to find, the first one, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. That's the front. I love that. I love that artwork. And there's the back. French flaps. You see that? And then the one in front. They look the same, don't they? Kind of different. And I also found Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Again, that similar artwork, which there's just something about it. I love it. There's your spine. There's the back. French flaps. And French flaps. Isn't that neato? And then another book that arrived, I think after I came back, is this from the Folio Society. It's this little book called The Meaning of Mice. And it's the size, it's smaller than a regular book. I can compare the see how much smaller it is. And what's really unique about this book, number one, they set it up to look like a mouse had actually written it. That's why it's smaller. But look at the way it opens. Look. Opens like this. And if you look at the end covers, you see the artwork there, which is so pretty. But look at the pages. They open like this. And you see they're written in like a handwritten is the story that the mouse writes. Isn't that neat? It's so pretty. And the illustrations are just delightful. And then on the back, when you go the other way, you sort of go through his day, getting up and having breakfast. And then he likes to go painting out in nature. This is just such a sweet book. I had to have it because of its uniqueness. Yeah, really neato. So that goes on my shelf with all my other folio thingies. And I think that's everything, except I have to tell you what I'm currently reading now. This is more in the study category, not just like reading for pleasure, but it can be a pleasure. The Trojan Epic by Quintus of Smyrna, which is the story of Troy after the war. little more detail. And like if you read the end of the Iliad, it ends shortly after Hector dies. But what about Achilles? We know Achilles dies. Well, this covers the details of that and then some. So, out of, I forgot how many books are in this. Out of 14 books, I'm reading only book 1, 3, 5, and 12. So just that many books. And then later on, I'll go back when I have a little more time, and then I'll read it all the way through. Because again, I like to experience an entire book, everything all together. That's part of the experience of it. But I just don't have the time right now. And I have sort of like a little study guide that I'm using with it, so I just want to focus on getting that out of the way. Okay, I think I caught up, everybody. Be healthy, and the school year's starting for a lot of us, so I wish you all the best, a great school year, and hope things go well, and you stay healthy during the school year. Goodness knows with everything we're dealing with. Stay strong, and like and subscribe. The more the merrier. I enjoy everybody's company, and thanks again. Bye-bye.